Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. The Rangers clinch a playoff berth and also reach 100 points. They're the first in the NHL to clinch a berth to the Stanley Cup playoffs and as well reach that 100-point mark in 72 games. So still 10 games to go, and yet the Rangers have already reached a point where they are 48-20-4. And not only, this is the first step, right? Clinching a playoff berth. But the Rangers' next game is at Colorado. Now, expectations for me in that game, we'll talk about it, aren't the highest. And that's okay. But if they somehow were to win that game or even get a point, if they can kind of stay level-headed, which won't be easy, the schedule beyond that, it's a lot of home games, and it's against a lot of non-playoff teams. A lot of them within the division. So some of them are rivals, but they have every reason to not only win the division, not only win the conference, but maybe even have the best record in the NHL. But again, still 10 games left, so a lot to go, but things are definitely looking up. That said, this game was not pretty at all. The Rangers win 6-5 in overtime against the Philadelphia Flyers. It was a really big game for Philly. I mean, they are right on the cusp, right on that borderline of making the playoffs. And, I talk about potential playoff preview. Well, the way the standings are kind of looking, there is a definite chance the Rangers will play Philly in the traditional 1 versus 8 sense. Nowadays, it's the 1 versus the second wild card. But with Washington continuing to play well and them kind of getting closer to maybe that third spot in the Metropolitan Division, the Flyers, who could still retain that spot, they may slip down to that second wild card spot or miss the playoffs completely. It's really unknown at this point who the Rangers will play, although I would say that Philly is one of the more likely ones at this point. At one point, to me, it was looking like it was definitely going to be, or not definitely, but it was Tampa Bay was seeming likely. But now that's not looking quite as probable. So, Philly was definitely, definitely trying to put their best foot forward in this game. They did not play particularly well, but they were much better than the Rangers. I mean, the Flyers were the better team. Rangers made a lot of mistakes, in this game. And somehow it didn't cost them. I mean, they were down 2-0 in the second period, somewhat similar to the Panther game in that sense. And so I talked about that. What were they, 0-9 when trailing by 2 or more at home this year? And now they're 2-9 because they beat Florida and now they beat Philly. And this one being in overtime, last game being in the shootout. But some positives, but a lot more negatives. I'm going to try not to harp on those too much because, look, the Rangers have been playing well lately. And a big issue is the fact that Eric Gustafsson was out. And so Brandon Scanlon made his NHL debut and didn't look great. I'm not going to be tough on the kid, making his NHL debut. This in an ideal situation would not have happened, but the defensive depth has really taken a hit, just beyond, obviously, the Ryan Lindgren, Jacob Trouba, now Eric Gustafsson injuries. But even if you think about in Hartford, Ben Harper sustained an injury a while ago. I think it was a season ender. Connor Mackey, who we saw in that Ottawa game before the All-Star break, he got hurt. So it's really the depth is really not quite there. And so while reports are that Scanlon has done a nice job at Hartford, and in an ideal situation, he wouldn't be playing. So what that then leads you to is they kept Miller Schneider together, which I agree with. But then Jones moves up with Fox. And look, here's the great thing is Zach Jones got 23 minutes of ice time. That has got to be way more than he's ever played in an NHL game, in a game that actually mattered. So I thought he was good, probably not as good as he's been in other situations. Elevating him to a top 4 role might be a little bit more than he can handle, but I like the test trial run to it. And I think that the way the pairs were set up were what they should have been. So Scanlon-Ruedel had its rough moments, and really by the end of it, Scanlon just didn't play. He ended up playing 10 minutes and 46 seconds, so they were kind of rolling 5 defensemen. And so that kind of did throw the pairs off a bit. But yeah, like, look, you're throwing out guys right now. It's, like Chad Ruedel, for example, like ideally, like he wouldn't be in there in your perfect setup. So, it was one thing to lose Trouba, another thing to then lose Lindgren, but then to lose Gustafsson as well leads to some issues. Although the good news is, look, we don't really know Gustafsson's status. I'd like to believe that this won't be a long-term injury. I'm going to assume, and I hate to do that, so take it with a little bit of a grain of salt, but it appeared to be concussion related. And so with that, it's a little bit unpredictable, but if we're to think somewhat optimistically, it shouldn't be out too long. And it does seem like Trouba and Lindgren aren't really far off. For me, there isn't really any need to completely rush them back. There just isn't. And they'll have their time. And then from there, look, other injuries might arise or players that are dealing with some things could get some time off. But look, it's still full systems go because these games are still very important. Certainly in the sense of winning the division. Then for me, winning the conference, the President's Trophy, that's just, that's a bonus. Although, when I do think about it, like if there were a Game 7 in the Stanley Cup Final, let's say you're playing Colorado, you would prefer that be at MSG than going to Colorado, who's a great home team. So there is definitely some relevance to it beyond just the idea of winning the President's Trophy. But, the defense has to get healthy for sure. The forwards, so Alex Wenberg was also out tonight. That is a big loss. Wenberg definitely just solidifies that, down the middle, third line center. So he was out dealing with personal reasons was what it was termed. And so he should be back there. He should be back in there soon. I think it was expected. I don't think this was anything that caught the Rangers off guard. And so what that meant is that Johnny Brodzinski was back as the third line center. And by the end of the game, the lines were completely shuffled. It was a really rough game for what was the fourth line, whatever you want to term it as. Goodrow originally was centering Vesey and Rempe, but then by the end of it, Rempe basically didn't play. I'm not sure if he played at all in the third period, quite frankly. He played 6 minutes and 52 seconds. And so then Will Cooley kind of slots down to the fourth line. It just wasn't good, and specifically Jimmy Vesey had a really rough game, really, really rough. The third and fifth goals were directly really from him. And you don't normally, like, it was a little uncharacteristic of Vesey, like this iteration of him. We don't, he's usually a pretty responsible player, but just the decision-making was more than questionable. And so in that moment, it made me think, if there were 13 healthy forwards, could he be considered a scratch? And I'm still going to go back to no, because he is a valued penalty kill guy. Like Barclay, it just wouldn't be. The precedent isn't fair, because if that were the case, like Barclay Goodrow should have been a scratch a long time ago, but he is valued, again, for his penalty killing. So, like, you can't really do that. But, what sucks too is that Will Cooley kind of like had a bit of a rough game. And, I don't think it had anything to do with that healthy scratch, but you got to wonder. It was something that, like, it was the first game he missed. Like, I just hope that didn't bring him down. He seems like he's like, mature for his age, and I don't think he'll let it bother him, but it was unfortunate. He didn't have the best of games. So Jack Roslovic also got demoted in the lineup. And I've been saying I like Roslovic, but he hasn't been great. He hasn't been. Like, I think, and it makes sense, right? Because Alex Wenberg, the acquisition cost for him was higher than Roslovic. I think Wenberg, while he's not going to, wow you, he, I think, is probably a little bit more of a valuable member than Roslovic. But, I thought it was interesting that he got moved down. And so what happened was Roslovic basically by the end was playing primarily with Brodzinski and Kakko, and then they were kind of rotating that spot with Zibanejad and Kreider. That all said, I think that Roslovic will be back there, but it was the first time that we really saw him kind of be demoted. So a lot of different things going on in this game, but let's jump into it because there is a lot to discuss. Really, Igor Shesterkin didn't play well, but it was really more of the players in front of him that struggled more than so much him, but he is a part of it, right? He gave up 5 goals. So Flyers-Rangers, first game at Madison Square Garden between these two teams this year. And this, as I've said in previous episodes, it's not the first case of a division rival not playing a machine till later on. We'll have another example of that coming up shortly of a team that hasn't played an MSG within the division. But Rangers won the first 2 games in Philly, November 24th, February 24th, in more low-scoring affairs. This game was completely different, but it did look like it was going to be low-scoring for a while. Honestly, through 2 periods, it did, until the third period just went crazy. And in the third period, there was a combined 7 goals. Just ridiculous. So, first period, there was no scoring in the first. I thought Philly was the better team. Rangers weren't bad in the first, but the Flyers had more of the zone time. They were the better team as I saw it. Adam Fox, who we will heap a lot of praise upon, he takes a penalty, a hooking penalty at 17:42. He hooks Tyson Foerster, and he's been taking more penalties lately. But hey, you know what? This current version of Fox, he can take all the penalties he wants, because he has just been so good, so noticeable, especially offensively, but he has taken on such a big workload defensively too. So, hey, take all the penalties you need to if you're going to play like this, but the Rangers do kill it off. So they do a nice job there. There weren't that many penalties taken in this game. So no score. And by the way, the goalie for the Philadelphia Flyers was Samuel Ersson, who the Rangers, I believe, they saw him previously, I believe. So second period comes around, and the Flyers would take the lead at 2:58. It was Scott Lawton scoring his 13th goal of the season from Konechny and Sanheim. This was a really bad line change by the Zibanejad line, and maybe most blame does go to. See, I don't know in terms of who you individually give blame to. I'll do it collectively to the whole line. Zibanejad, Kreider, and Roslovic. And look, more so in the case of Kreider, like we've talked about. And I know in the comment section as well, it's been discussed, and I agree, that there's been a little bit of laziness, if you will, and just not being quite dialed in. And so he's part of that. Then Roslovic, I question the defensive stuff. I question the little things that coaches probably value. And he was kind of the last one. He probably should have. In fact, I think that they charged a minus against him. At least they did initially. They might have changed it, but he was kind of the last one that came off. And so it put the line that came on in a tough spot, and Lawton kind of goes in somewhat all alone. I think it was Keandre that might have been in the vicinity, and he snaps it past Shesterkin to make it 1-0 Flyers. Later in the second, Vincent Trocheck trips Foerster. So Foerster, good young rookie player for the Flyers, draws a penalty, although he would actually then take a penalty later in the period, but I digress. But Trocheck takes a penalty, so you lose a key penalty kill guy, and the Flyers do score in the power play. Ryan Poehling scores his 10th goal of the season from Lawton and Samula. So Poehling was kind of just wide open in front. I forgot who, what it was? Wow, I think it was actually, so you know what? Vesey actually was responsible for three goals against us. I think it was him that kind of slipped up top. So yeah, really rough game for Jimmy Vesey. As I'm kind of rethinking about these goals, yeah, like that kind of just put them in a tough spot. It might have been, I don't know, someone with Ruedel, someone might have been a little bit out of position as well, and the Flyers do score to make it 2-0. And so it has that feel to it, again, the Flyers were kind of, to me, just one goal away there from this game kind of being over. As much as the Rangers are resilient and they come back, I think if you make it 3-0, there's a decent chance that might be too tough to come back from, but who draws the penalty? Adam Fox, which is exactly what happened. So there are some similarities to the last game. Foerster high six Fox at 14:40, and the power play gets it done. And their only chance, they go 1-for-1, and it's a goal by Mika Zibanejad, who has certainly had the Philadelphia Flyers number. And I thought Mika had a really good game. It was a patented, was it a one-timer? If it wasn't a one-timer, it was very quickly released off the pass. It was the 24th goal for Zibanejad, assisted by Panarin and Fox. And with that assist, and I should have mentioned this earlier if I hadn't, because of the symmetry here, the 100 points that the Rangers now have, Artemi Panarin on that same night, he gets his 100th point of the season. First Ranger since Jaromir Jagr to have 100 points. I believe the 7th Ranger in their history. So, kudos to him. And, I think there's more points to come in these last 10 games. But that was a big goal for the Rangers to cut it to 2-1. Make no mistake about it. That was really important because they were not playing well in the second at all. They didn't play well all night. It was very sloppy, ugly, but they find a way. So third period comes around, and this is where shit gets crazy. At 1:23, Brodzinski scores his 6th goal of the season from Kakko. Flyers just kind of fell asleep. Brodzinski was open. I think another guy was open, and Kakko finds Brodzinski, and he scores the goal to tie it up at 2. Then, not too far after that, at 2:57, Alexis Lafrenière scores his 21st goal of the season, unassisted. So this was a play, nice rush up the ice. Keandre Miller sets up Lafrenière. Ersson makes the save. Zibanejad's kind of in on the rebound, and it ends up loose. And Lafrenière kind of backhands it in. Really just like what I'm seeing from Alexis Lafrenière. And it doesn't stop there. Doesn't stop there for Alexis. But that gives Rangers a 3-2 lead. But then at 6:45, Travis Konecny ties it. It's his 31st goal of the season unassisted. Not a smart Jimmy Vesey from the right side just totally wrist one way wide. And it sets up an odd man rush, a 2-on-1 the other way. But Zach Jones was kind of caught up ice. And Adam Fox, who's pretty good in these 2-on-1 situations, I think he was trying to kind of deconnect me into, taking the shot, which he did. And Fox wasn't really able to get back over there to maybe poke it. So Konecny has the clean shot, and he does fire it past Igor to make it 3-3. At 8:38, Zach Jones is called for high sticking. Morgan Frost. Kind of a rough shift for Zach Jones, and it ends up in that penalty. But the Rangers score shorthanded. So the special teams get it done for the Rangers. It's Vincent Trocheck with his 25th goal of the season, assisted by Mika Zibanejad at 9:34. So this is a 2-on-1 play, a beautiful pass by Mika, where, and he's known for this. We've seen it where he kind of just sticks the leg up, puts it back down, does a little shimmy, then goes backhand. We see him with Kreider sometimes connect on that. But this time Trocheck's on the receiving end, and they score to make it 4-3. So the Rangers retake the lead. But at 11:45, Owen Tippett scores to tie it up at 4. His 26th goal of the season from Morgan Frost. And just like that, we're tied again. And this was another play where Tippett's going in all alone and not great coverage by the Rangers. I think it ends up where Keandre was kind of the last line of defense that, the Flyers went by. I think maybe Alexis Lafrenière was on for that as well and couldn't, stop the puck from – it was a collective effort. But what's unfortunate is it's a backhand off the post, then off of Igor's back and trickles in. So, kind of a fortunate bounce there for Owen Tippett. Ties it up at 4, but then the Rangers take the lead again. 5-4 as Lafrenière scores the second of the night, 22nd of the season from Trocheck and Panarin. So this is a one faceoff by Trocheck, which we're used to seeing from him. And I think the Panarin shot, it was either the Panarin shot that was blocked and then Lafrenière took a wrist shot, or Lafrenière followed up on his own block shot. But Alexis, just the effort, I like that I'm seeing the effort, because I feel like he was getting gassed. I feel like just the, what's the word I'm looking for? Not energy so much, but stamina. Stamina is the word I'm looking for. Yeah, he just, and this year it's there. It's there. In the dog days of the season, it is still very much alive. And that's his 20th even strength goal. That's second. That is second on the team behind Artemi Panarin. And so, that's why I'm impressed by it. People say, 22 goals, 47 points. It's good, but it's not amazing. But I think context is important here because he doesn't have that many power play points. He is a major producer at even strength, and I think that's a very good sign. So that makes it 5-4, but yet again, the Flyers tied up. Tyson Foerster, his 19th goal of the season, and it's unassisted. And this was another play by Jimmy Vesey, which I don't know what he was thinking about. Where he puts it in a bad position. He kind of pokes it towards the Ranger net. I know Chad Ruedel was on, was kind of struggling a little bit on that shift. And yeah, just not great all around. Igor, just ugly. Ugly is the word to describe it. But the Rangers are able to get it to overtime. And that in and of itself kind of felt like a win. Didn't feel deserved. And so they go to overtime. And this one would end pretty quickly. 36 seconds in, Adam Fox does it again. It's that wrist shot. It's the same position that we saw against the Panthers. We've seen it in recent games as well. So for Fox, this is at least a 3-game goal streak for Adam Fox. I want to see the game logs. Yeah. Scored against Boston, Florida, and now Philly. And 2 points each within those 3 games. And what is he on now? He's probably on like a 7-8 game point streak, something along those lines. And, that's the combination. Those are the guys in the 3-on-3 that you want to see. It was Fox, from Trocheck, and Panarin. Those are the 3 that I think most Ranger fans would prefer out there in that scenario. So Rangers win 6-5. And again, a lot of symmetry with the clinching of a playoff berth, with the 100 points, with the Panarin 100 points. So it's pretty awesome. Again, Rangers didn't play well. They were outshot 41-27. Wasn't really all that good, but they did what they had to do. And now they will head to Colorado in what will be a really tough game. The Avalanche tonight had their 9-game win streak snapped home against Montreal. And Colorado is a great home team. By record, they might be the only home team that's better than the Rangers in the league. So I can't imagine that they've had too many, if at all, 2-game losing streaks at home. That said, we'll see what happens. It'll be a really good test. The Rangers did beat Colorado at home in a low-scoring game, one in which they kind of just found a way, and that was the first game out of the All-Star break. And the Rangers won that 2-1 in overtime. This one, I'd expect more scoring. I hope there isn't in some ways, because with this Ranger defense, it is, just the thought of Nathan MacKinnon just streaking down the ice against, some of these defensemen, it's a little scary. So I think we need to kind of temper expectations, but the Rangers have always kind of found a way to step up when you kind of least expect them. But they are entitled. Look, they are entitled to maybe putting up a stinker against the Avalanche. But, look, this will be interesting because this is 2 of the best teams in the NHL. And I'm definitely looking forward to it. I would expect it to be Igor. I would. Don't hold me to it, but I think it'll be Igor versus Georgiev with Jonathan Quick going against the Coyotes. That would be my assumption, but we'll see what they decide to do. Hopefully, one of these defensemen can maybe come back. I think it's actually possible. Would I bet on it? Probably not, but they do seem in the case of Lindgren and Trouba, they do seem close, and the nature of Gustafsson's injury is one where it's kind of unpredictable. Maybe there is a chance that maybe he returns sooner than later. So yeah, Rangers get it done. They win in overtime. They beat the Philadelphia Flyers 6-5, and they have punched their ticket to the playoffs.